Welcome to the Security Cocktail Hour. I'm Joe Patty.
I'm Adam Roth.
Adam, how are you doing today?
You know, I'm doing well, actually, even though it's 3 a.m. In June 10th. We're not allowed to tell the date, right?
Yeah, you're not, but you can tell what show it is. Obviously, I see you've got all the regalia there. I feel like I'm not supporting the show here.
Hold on 1 second. Excuse me a second.
That's right. I do have my mug. We have mugs. But
So
anyway,
this episode is after Thanksgiving, and I have to tell you, Staten Island's known for the turkeys. I haven't seen one since.
of course not, because they're all, well, whatever.
Just one
These
right
things
now.
happen.
Yes.
Anyway, enough Staten Island talk. We got a lot to get to because we have not one but two guests today. We have Lisa Landau. Hi, Lisa.
Joe, hi Adam. Thank you for
Hello.
having
And
us. Good
Tim
to be
Shipp.
here.
Welcome,
Hey
Tim.
guys, good to see you again.
Good seeing you too. Yeah, Adam, talking about the hours. We are truly global today. We have the New York area, but also Lisa, you're in Japan, aren't you, I think?
That is correct. I am in Tokyo.
And Tim, are you home in the UK right now?
I am in the UK. Yeah, got back from Tokyo a couple of weeks ago. So and then
Yeah.
back out to the US later on in the new year.
Nice.
I was a little envious of him. He got a nice little placard for his desk. I didn't get one for my desk from you, Joe.
Would you like
Yeah,
a little
no
placard for your
expense
desk?
spared.
I see.
I didn't get one from Tim either.
It came
Come
as a
on.
surprise to me, to be fair. But yeah, thank you, appreciate it.
Well, today we're going to be talking about a classic and integral and very important subject in security, incident response. These days, a lot of people say it's the heart of things. And the really wonderful thing about it is, I'm going to plaster this video and all the shorts with IR hashtags and everything. So hopefully this gets us a lot of views. Okay, Lisa, so you have been in cyber for a while, and your background is actually a little unique compared to a lot of the other people we often hang out with, right?
I guess define
Well, I
define
mean,
unique.
well, unique in that you're an Israeli cybersecurity person who is not from 8200. Seems like everyone we know is from 8200.
Yeah, a lot of them. It's a very very big unit with a lot of people in it. But yeah, I am not from it. And although it's I am from military intelligence, and it's not like we said, all the Israelis have been somewhere, so it's not that interesting. But it is just relevant to the story because my shift of industries from what I was doing before cyber and into cyber kind of was a bit of a closure for me personally in what I wanted to do and what I missed from those good old days. So kind of getting into the cybersecurity industry was something that kind of had a sentiment for me and not just a job. And then originally I was already in Japan through another company, so I basically helped them jumpstart Japan, and building out all the security services, the SOC, and it expanded into advanced services, which in time became IR as well. Some advisory consulting, took the role globally from out of Japan. That was kind of, to sidetrack from that a little bit, that was a bit of a glass ceiling I personally had to break because I was told that, well, first of all, being a woman in a managerial position and especially in Japan is like something very unusual, but also I was told very clearly by my American management that nobody from Japan will ever manage globally, and that was something we changed very quickly. So it
Good
was
for
something
you.
to work through.
Yes, well done.
It wasn't easy. It was a challenge, but it happened. So I'm very happy about that. And yeah, basically kind of did the security services globally, realized that I really like that aspect of the professional service, the human aspect of the cyber. And then in the last 2-3 years, one of the many things I was doing, one of the gigs was to entirely rebuild the incident response practice, which is where Tim and I kind of got together, and I asked him to come and help on the technical hands-on side, which is not my strength. Together we rebuilt the practice, and I think it would make sense that he takes over from there and tells more. But we did build, we kind of cracked the code on how to build a dream team and how to modernize incident response, and had so much fun that fun was part of it. We decided it deserved a bigger spotlight and eventually went on our own and decided to focus a lot of our efforts on what we believe in and then solving kind of the bigger problems of breaches and not just slapping band-aids on them, and to kind of to put all the energy and effort into it and to do it right. I think Tim can add a lot more. He has interesting stories about his background.
Yeah, Tim. So you're more of the hardcore technical guy, as we say.
Yeah, that'd be fair. So, I mean, I started my career. I mean, technically, I was a networking and voice over IP engineer. Went to work for a telephony company. They made PBXs. They were getting a lot of toll fraud. They just got into the IP space over from sort of traditional sort of telephone systems. So, started investigating how to, how these companies were getting compromised and how the toll fraud was happening. Turned out I was really good at breaking stuff. So they had to fly me to Japan a few times to sit in a room with the engineers and explain how I broke their brand new products. From there, went to a few conferences, found out turns out you actually get paid for doing this. So off the back of that, started my sort of career in doing incident response and pen testing and red teaming. Been leading incident response teams for 15 years. I've worked for 2 defense companies, a couple of security companies, and the final one being an EDR provider, which is where Lisa and I met. For my sins, I'm a military reservist specializing in incident response as well. So effectively, I'm part of the UK Cyber Reserves. Although not so much these days because the new business is taking up 110% of my time. But yeah, it's incident response is what I do. It's what I enjoy. It's what gets me out of bed in the morning. And been doing it since before cyber was a thing. Back when it was good old information assurance.
Yeah, man. I did a lot of PBX stuff. I did stuff with syrup and skinny, and I worked for something called a BLECT. Not sure if you've ever heard of BLECT. Yeah, because most people haven't, but I worked for a company where we were building a local exchange carrier, and we had PBXs in the middle of a gym in the middle of Midtown Manhattan. So you would have to walk through a gym, a very affluent gym, go into a closet, and there was PBXs in there and risers for 20, 30, 40 floors. So we had to, punch down, white, blue, blue, white, orange, orange, white, green, green, white. And then we'd hook up the PBXs. And I did a lot of small PBXs like Shortel. I did something bad, kind of like in the UK. We set up a VPN site to site, and then we put our Shortel phones in the cages in I always say it wrong, Park Royal or something like that in UK. And then the problem is, if you dial 911 while you're in the UK, you would end up calling the 911 public service access point in Long Island. So you're not allowed to do that. You get in trouble for that, obviously. But those were the old days.
Adam, you're talking about closets behind gyms and all this wacky wiring. So it sounds like you were building a boiler room. I mean,
No,
seriously,
no,
was
no.
this legit? I don't know.
No, a lot of local exchange carriers put they slap their 5E SS switches, is what we call them, right, Tim? Or those switches in the middle of wherever they can place them, and then the risers go straight up, many floors. So somebody says, "I need 4 phones today." You literally walk over with 4 phones, pop them in, and within about an hour, they have 4 new phones. And back then, we also did D-slams. Sorry, so I'm dating myself. DSL, multiplexers.
Yeah.
My God, those good old days. All right, back to IR. Sorry.
Well, Tim, we've said before, we've talked to other people in IR, and it seems like it's a field where, it's so intense. It's, well, both on the technical and the people side, it's very intense. It's very stressful. It's all this stuff that it seems like a lot of the people, to get into it, you got to love it. You got to be into it. If you're lukewarm and if you're not crazy, you'll go nuts. And gee, it sounds like you not only do it full time, 100%, but then, even your reserve duty, you don't look for a break. You're doing it there too. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, things have changed since COVID. I mean, you go back 6 years. I was on a plane once a month to God knows where. I had a bag packed, and it was always on a Friday. Call would come in. I'd be making my way down to Heathrow Airport while someone was booking me a flight. You would potentially be sleeping in a server room, or or very little sleep until the job was done. Things have changed. Things have modernized now. The vast majority of what we do is remote. With implementations of automation and AI and everything else, it's taken some of the low hanging fruit. It's not the 14-hour days that it used to be, but it's still an emergency to that customer. It's still the most important thing in their life at that moment in time. So you can't half-ass it.
I have well, both of us. We have a friend of ours that was former 8200, working for an incident response company that was spun off by a lot of those people from 8200, and he would tell us stories like, I can't even think for 5 6 days. Like, he would be like, we have an adversary, we're handling it, and because I needed de-stress, I can't even be like, he would disappear for 2 3 days. We wouldn't talk to anybody, and we realized that there's a lot of like critical incident stress management, the same type of stress that you would have if you were a first responder, and we understand that. And ironically, when I worked for Joe, and we definitely dealt with your EDR company, but that's another story. But at one point, when we were doing purple teams with those guys, we were a little bit of a bunch of wise asses. We called our team 8199. And we did a T-shirt that said 8199 greater than symbol 8200. So we really went to piss them off. And we did so much. I got reprimanded multiple times because even though I was the blue team, I kept on thinking I was
Which
the
are the
red team.
defenders.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I know for the audience. Red team is the attackers. Blue teams are the defenders. We're supposed to see how good we are for our listeners. I did bad things. I did adversarial things as a blue team person. I went on their laptops as service accounts. I screwed up their hashes. I did a lot of bad things. I was a bad boy. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah,
I
we're
think
like,
it's fair to add that red team and blue team is also part of our world, and even though we're focused on incident response today, we see it as part of one whole. So we definitely dabble into all of them.
Yeah,
It's
you, you,
amazing
you
stuff.
can't defend. You can't defend effectively unless you know what
How
the
to?
adversary's doing.
Yeah.
So it's all of our guys are all dual hatted. When they're not doing IR, they're doing red teaming, but not at the same time, because that's that's the one thing you can do
Not for the same
during
customer.
a blue team, a purple team exercise that you can't do during a real incident. You are very much limited to defending, which is the hard bit. Argue.
yes, it is very hard. And, it's even harder when, you get these very expensive consultants in, they put in this whole program, we're trying to up our game. Like you said, the defenders need to learn, and we learn against real attackers. Then what does Adam do? He starts like trolling them from day one. I'm like,
But but in my defense, these guys recommended products, and we use products that were already installed. I was watching their screens from the day they started, looking at everything they were doing, and they never knew that application that they recommended, that deception technology, was watching all their hashes and every computer they were on, and I was taunting them, and they're like, well, "How do you know this?" I'm like, you guys are
For
former like
you.
8200. You guys are like red team. Figure it out." And then I got yelled at by Joe.
well, actually, that's a good question. I mean, do you see, a lot of the ransomware, a lot of these attacks are a business now. I know that you're going to respond against. Do you see people, I mean, are the days of the clever hackers and all the people, taunting the defenders or messing with them? Do you see any of that, or is it all just business? They're doing their job, and you got to get them out, and that's it.
It's definitely a business, and it's the sort of ransomware as a service model. So you've got the young budding people who are coming in, and typically the ransomware threat actors who are going to actually deliver the payload at the end aren't the people who compromise that system. There's freelancers, if you like, who are going out scanning the internet looking for exploits, and when they get a compromise, they do that reconnaissance stage to understand the value of the target they have, and then they will post that on whatever dark web forum and say, "Hey, I have got this, this hospital in X state. Yeah, it's going to cost you $20,000 for access." And it's sold on and sold on until and then a larger, more established threat actor group will then take over and exploit them. I mean, there are. I mean, that is one model. That a lot of it does vary. But ultimately, you're right. This is a business. It's not personal, and it's very very indiscriminate. A lot of people think that an APT is going to be what finishes their company, or that's what they're defending against. Reality is, it's probably going to be a web shell on a server that you've not patched for 2 years, or a VPN vulnerability that's going to allow an attacker in, and it's going to be ransomware that gives you that bad day.
You bring up a good point, Tim. Like, and Lisa, like, Jeremy and I had these conversations many times where we've had old legacy servers that we couldn't get rid of it, and we would beg the company put the money in there, and they're like, figure it out. And we would use microsegmentation and put in, whatever we could to limit the access to that OS that's been sunset. And for those who are listening, basically what we're talking about is old servers no longer have updates, and we can't do anything about them, but they need to stay in place. And every once in a while, on the blue moon, a threat intel company that we would use would say, "Hey, just letting you know, it's out there. Somebody's talking about a law firm on the dark web in Midtown Manhattan that's merger acquisition. Just make sure it's not you." I'm like,
Then so we start freaking out. Is it us? Is it us? Is it us?
we would sit there spinning, and you're constantly in a battle. And I know that you guys know that because people are constantly calling you saying, "What do we do?" People really get that anxiety. One example, really quick, is my kid told me that one of the guys that works for me, he got one of those sexploitation emails, and he was flipping out. And I'm like, "Listen, relax." He goes, "They're asking for a certain amount of Bitcoin." I go, "Take the text. First of all, don't answer it. If you answer it, I'm going to beat the living crap out of you. Take the text, put it into a browser, and see how many times that comes up. You're not special." So I'm sorry.
Well, actually, with it becoming more routine, I mean, I guess some of the tropes or some of the old school things we've had that, people we've known have said, it's like, oh, you have the technical people, then you have all the business people or the CIO and all the heads. They're in a conference room and they're freaking out. I mean, is that still happening? I mean, at the business level too, or has it become, I don't know, people are more numb to it, or they're like, yeah, this is part of doing business. I mean, what's the level there these days?
It really depends on the company, and the area they're in. If it's a bank and they can't process transactions and they're losing $1 million an hour, then it's a lot more urgent than a manufacturing company that can shut the internet, continue to function, whilst you fight the fire. It's a sliding scale.
I think the initial reaction would be this, like Joe described, for everyone, because you don't understand in the first moment what's happening, right? You don't understand if you can still function or not, or if it's something that's spreading or not. So maybe at stage 2, those who are more tolerant would be okay, we shut this down, you go work, you investigate while we're still operating. But I think I don't think I've ever dealt with a customer who had a breach that didn't have a sense of urgency about them or a sense of stress about them. It wouldn't be natural. They're all very grateful in the end, and everybody, like, takes all their stress out on you during the initial moment. So yeah, I don't think there was anyone who rolled in and said, "I understand that I need an incident response, but I'm totally chill about it." I'm yet to meet that person. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't know about
Yeah.
totally chill, but
Yeah.
I'll tell you this, right? So
Yeah.
when Joe was the head of our cybersecurity program, one of the things that former Israeli security company did was instilled in us constantly about playbooks and being prepared and tabletop exercises. The more prepared you are, the better you are. And I can use 2 analogies in 2 different ways. One, I like to go in the ring and I like to box. And if you really have that sense of confidence, it doesn't mean that you could beat the crap out of somebody, but you have that sense of confidence, you're going to go in the ring being very calm. You know it's adversarial. You know the person wants to take your head off or maybe hit you, but at the same time, you're going to be calm moving around. And the funny part about the whole incident response is it's no different from I'm an EMT for only about 8 years. I was in the 911 system in New York. Nobody ever said, "For God, my father's having a heart attack. I'm so happy to see you. How's everything? Want coffee?" They're not there to welcome you happily. They're
Exactly.
like, "Oh my God, please come in here. What can you do? Help me." Everyone's going to be in a sense of disarray and stress. But a good company that comes in will instill confidence in the client. And my wife hates me when I say stuff like this. I never say everything's going to be okay, because you can never say that. But what I will say is we will do the very best we can do to restore, your applications and your network to as quick as possible. Because I'll never tell somebody as an EMT, don't worry, everything's going to be fine. Relax, we're here. You can't say that.
No.
You're absolutely right. Like, you nailed it. It's a very good point about the company that comes in that's gonna help you and instill that sense of calm. And it's part of our slogans where we say how we're gonna bring the calm into the chaos of the moment. And you've mentioned that other company already several times, and I have a few things to say about them and their practices, but I don't know if this is the right time. And I know that Tim will have a lot to add on it, so I'll just say something brief. He'll expand. But on one hand, I think it's very good that they made you practice a lot and train you, because theories are good, papers in a drawer are not very helpful when something real happens. On the other hand, playbooks come with a caveat. They can only prepare you for a very
Correct.
prescribed scenario, which a breach is not going to be, and you need to be flexible, and you need to be the EMT, the firefighter, battle tested to know what to do. I will hand it over to Tim because I know he wants to say something about it.
No, I think you covered a lot of the points as well. I mean, I ex-military boxer. I use the same sort of analogies where you've got to be comfortable with the ropes on your back. The first time you're doing this can't be the before real. Tabletop exercises absolutely have their place. Purple team exercises absolutely have their place. Playbooks, to an extent, as Lisa said, they're only as good as that particular scenario. And what we tend to find is companies will do the playbooks. They'll do all of the exercises, the tabletops. They'll send their guys on SANS courses. But when it actually happens, it's all very different. And there's this sort of incident paralysis where everybody just stands there waiting for somebody to do something. Sort of those first sort of 48 hours are sort of the most critical during that incident. And what we tend to find is it's always a Friday. It's always a Friday.
Or a public holiday.
Or a public holiday.
They love the long weekends too, right?
The long
Yeah, and
weekends.
it's by design. It's absolutely by design. That threat actor wants to have as
Exactly.
much effect as possible over that weekend. They know that customer's going to ring 2 or 3 instant response companies. They're going to pick one, pick 2. They're then going to go through all the commercials and legal stuff. They're then going to go home for the weekend, and we see it all the time where we're ready to work, and they wait till Monday when half the machines are encrypted and everything's already on fire. And then it's
one of the most painful things to hear from a customer when they understand they have an incident. Let's say you speak to them on Saturday, or I don't know, on Friday, and they say, "Great, let's do a kickoff call on Monday." And you're like starting to rip your hair out, like you're losing 48 hours. Are you serious? You're losing 48 hours because it's weekend. It's gonna cost you so much more.
I can't imagine that.
They do
I
that.
had always run things. I mean, going back years and years, it's like, well, we used to have a little more slack, but then when ransomware came along with the encryption, we're like, you got to go now, no matter what. And the thing about the long weekend was it would be like someone hits you on a Friday afternoon before a long weekend. It slows you down because people are already leaving on vacation. But people will let things go until Monday and say, yeah, no. Are you that's amazing to me. That I hadn't heard before.
So I got to tell you, when I was on call, I could be in the middle of working out. I could be at a family function. I would get a call, and I would have to spring into action, because I would be that first line of defense. The laptop's there. I'm hoping to have Wi-Fi. I have a Wi-Fi probably. Everything's charged. I have my go bag. Joey once told me, he goes, I need you to leave where you are now. We'll pay for that training session. And I left.
Yeah.
I had no choice. But
Adam used to tell me, he goes, I missed this alert on the weekend because I was in the shower. I missed it by 5 minutes, and I'd say, so what's your point?
Well, I mean, because I didn't, I was supposed to turn off the shower every 3 minutes, but that's another story. But what I'm really getting at is even if a company already has a public relations company, their outside cyber attorney, even an incident response company, it still takes 48 hours to invoke everybody, get everybody in position. You
They
may have
shouldn't.
one company. I
That's
know
slow.
this is, yeah, Joe. I really believe that because let's just talk about any company. They might have somebody go to their Tel Aviv office or the UK office or the US office. It'll take them 3, 4 hours to get that one person there. And then still some people are flying in. I know it's different now. COVID changed a lot of things, but still there's a lot of people who want to come on site. They want to do the forensics. They want to use that hard drive. They want to isolate the machine. And people do stupid knee-jerk reactions. Oh my God, there's a threat actor. Pull the plug. They think they pulled the plug, and meanwhile, they're already there hanging out, having coffee in the middle of your hard drive, siphoning things slowly through a little freaking shell going out to another place. One of our former colleagues told us not only did a company get compromised, they compromised another company, and they went through one shell to another shell out the other ISP.
And that is the second biggest problem we find with IR is a lot of when companies are engaged, a lot of companies are still doing the old traditional DFIR, where there's a heavy reliance on digital forensics to the point where they are going in and doing disk images. We've had this with a competitor where it takes us. We design the product so I can spin it up from my phone. It takes 3 minutes to spin up a customer instance. Customer installs the agent. It's doing 50% of the sort of low-hanging fruit without any human interaction because that customer, that CISO wants an answer there and then. They don't want to wait 7 hours to take a disk image after that person. So fly a guy to site, 7 hours to do a disk image, 7 hours to process that image. That's one machine. Let's look at every machine all at once, and let's actually give you some tangible information and intel to work on. But that's the big problem is the companies like to fly a lot of people to site because it's expensive. They'll have 6 guys, they'll have a project manager, and they'll all be
And the
billing you. They'll all
caterer,
be billing you.
joking.
You can build them.
It wouldn't surprise me. But and that's the problem we come up against is you've already burnt those 48 hours, deciding on a provider. They're then going to fly someone to site. They're then going to start taking disk images and processing disk images and manually going through master file tables with Excel. That time is gone, but a lot of customers don't understand that because not all instant response companies are created equal.
There's a
A
lot
lot
of
of companies,
legacy.
exactly. But as a customer, you don't know that until you've had an incident.
Tim, like you were saying, it used to be the machine gets compromised, so we take it offline, we pull a hard drive, you do all this examination, you had to send someone on site, and you multiply that out. It's very expensive. Now the machines tend to have the tools on them where we don't want to take it offline. We want to see what's going on and see what the bad guy is doing. And that's actually now why you can do a lot of the work remote, because you're accessing that stuff even if you're in the office kind of remotely anyway, right?
Exactly. I mean, if the threat actor's got remote access, we can have remote access, and it depends on the point of the incident. If they're doing data exfiltration and you have no idea what's going in or out, then you may need to consider pulling the plug. But if you get in there early enough, and you're actually in there whilst the incident's happening, this is the problem with a lot of EDRs. A lot of solutions out there will detect the ransomware deployment. So when the ransomware when the ransomware message pops or the files start getting encrypted,
It's
that's
way too
when
late.
you've missed the entire attack. You've missed you've missed the initial infection vector. You've missed the escalation of privileges. Now, that guy's potentially been in there a week, 2 weeks, a month, casing you out, understanding where your critical assets are, understanding where all that critical information is. You're catching it at the tail end. The damage is already done. Realistically, you've already lost all your data. They've taken what they perceived to be important, and you're just catching the encryption. At that point, you're kind of documenting you're just documenting the damage. You're not mitigating an incident.
Right. Yeah. It seems like with an attack, a lot of people, even in the industry, they think they've heard, oh, ransomware. It's like, so my screen pops up or something gets on my machine, the screen pops up and it's, blue or whatever color. And it says, you're screwed. You're encrypted. Give us a bunch of money. And it's not quite that sudden. It takes longer and you can detect that
Exactly that.
stuff and respond to it. Right.
Yeah, you look at a traditional, a traditional company that's got a traditional file server. So they've got, a couple of terabytes of solid state, of old school solid state disks. That's going to take a week to encrypt. So when you see that initial ransomware message, you haven't lost everything. But if you're going to delay for a week whilst you get guys on site and sign all the paperwork, then the clock started the moment you got that ransomware message. And the faster you can react and the faster you can actually understand the attack and mitigate it, you might even be at that point where you need to consider paying the ransomware message because you understand what's happened and you've stopped it.
Yes, incident response has changed or has the potential to change because not all the companies, not all the consulting companies are willing to change the way they're doing it. A lot of people, like we said, are still doing it in a very human, very analog, very traditional way, not very efficient. We're choosing a different way. But also one of the reasons it's very confusing is because for the companies, for the organizations that are suffering from a breach, is because their programs and their tool sets and everything are aimed at preventing the attacks, and that's what they do all day long. So they haven't gone through a lot of breaches, and we usually talk about it in a different context, but it's relevant here too. They don't know what an attack looks like. They don't know what an IR looks like. And we've had it a lot, and this is kind of conversations I've had with my team a lot, is that you need to try to see it through their eyes. You know what's going on. You know what's going to happen. You know what you're going to do and how. They don't level with them because they haven't had an attack before. They don't know what an incident response looks like. So we need to, it's not something, when everybody buys, antivirus, EDR, XDR, SIEM, whatever, but incident response is something that has kind of a lot of mystery. When there is a breach, then we'll talk about it. Most people don't even think about it or don't think about what it looks like.
That's a perfect question to lead into, I think, right? So Lisa and Tim, you know, one of the things I've learned is protection in layers. Am I wrong when thinking that an organization, assuming they can afford it, because you guys, right? You guys are not doing Groupon for your IR. Companies have to have money to invest to bring you in, and there are companies that want help but probably can't afford it. But let's just talk about prevention. As an IR company, do you recommend an EDR and a deception technology and maybe old school or no knack? Or is there a set of tools that an organization should have to prepare themselves for a possible threat?
I mean, everything helps. Everything's a layer in that defense. I mean, having an EDR, crucial. Having AV, crucial. But you need to assess your risk depending on the company as well. If your information is valuable to another organization or another country, then your risk is probably higher. Even ransomware threat actors now, they have access to the same EDRs that you have. They will have access to other companies that have the latest version of whatever EDR. They test all their implants. A lot of the obfuscation tools they use, they are sold because they're and you can find them online. So you have your Brute Retel or your Cobalt Strike beacon. You can run it through an obfuscation tool. And that obfuscation tool is designed and advertises to bypass EDR. It is a cat and mouse to that extent. Have offline backups. Have offline remote backups and MFA, and you're 90% there. Because what we find a lot of the time is the customer has lost their data. The only person that has a copy, the only copy is encrypted. They don't know what the attack has taken. Logs, the amount of times we come into a customer and we can't tell them that what's been taken because they don't have sufficient logging. It's terrifying how many customers are spending hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars capturing logs into Splunk or Elastic, but no one's actually sat down and said, are these logs actually useful? If there was an incident, can an incident responder actually do anything with these? And that's why we sort of do the incident readiness work, where we will come in and actually check, if you were to have an incident, how effective is your tooling going to be? But you can't go wrong with having deception technologies, with having EDR, with having antivirus. Everything's a layer, but these are businesses, and their business is ransomware, and they have access to all of the tools that you have, and they do the testing.
It's not just the tooling. Obviously, tooling has a place, and like Tim said, it depends on the company and like their outcomes or their they're non-negotiables of what they can't live without in terms of damage. But it's not just the tool set, it's the processes and it's how these tools are configured and the preparedness. So it's the overall program with the processes and how all the things are tied together. Incident response partner inclusive of this, because those, when it does happen, those 48 hours or whatever it may be is critical. So if whoever you're with needs to actually be available to you and not turn you down. So like we, for example, have a way where we're already like pre-positioned, we're there before anything happens. Other people can do it differently. There's a traditional retainers, whatever it may be, whoever you're with, make sure they are actually available and will be there very quickly.
Do you guys, I know a lot of incident response companies are now coming out with their own product where they put their own agent on the machines that they could jump into action and maybe get telemetry. Is that what you guys do too?
So we absolutely do, yes. So we have our own product, and we've kind of focused. We absolutely do Windows, but we've kind of focused on the gaps that a lot of other companies have as well. Threat actors know, that Windows is very well protected now. Linux not so much, Mac not so much. So we're seeing a lot of attacks now that are targeting Linux, targeting ESXi hypervisors, because they know that EDRs and AV don't necessarily put as much time and effort into those. So that's where we focus now. We focus on Kubernetes, we focus on Docker, on Linux, on your critical infrastructure that is a big dark spot for a lot of companies.
A certain EDR company, which I won't mention the name, was not very effective with Linux.
A lot aren't.
A lot
If
of
you're using a seat by seat
are.
licensing, Windows is your battleground. Windows what brings in your revenue, and what historically for the past 10, 15 years has been that's userland. That's spear phishing and Trojanized documents and everything. That was what got you into a company. Now it's compromising a VPN concentration. Now it's compromising an internet facing web application,
I
which is
was
probably Linux.
Yeah, I was trying to be funny because I know that a lot of organizations use golden images, and certain EDRs don't work great on that master golden image, and then you end up running into issues when you start spawning new VMs. So I'm alluding to a certain organization you might know. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah, the problem with golden images is they're only as good as when they're created as well. It's unless you're really hot with your golden image with updating your golden images. Again, the single biggest thing you can do as a customer is patch if you want to mitigate a large percentage of threats. It's not fun, it's not sexy, it's not cool, but
It's effective.
exactly.
But people, and that's the funny thing, right? Everybody wants that golden tool and that amazing, this will solve everything, just buy this. But at the end of the day, regular hygiene is what really helps to prevent, in my opinion, and I'm not an IR person, but prevents that attack. Patching, knowing what applications you have, making sure that you do get good use cases with your SIM. Nothing's 100%. Making sure that you do actually patch your hardware, your firmware. Firmware is a big issue these days. People keep on forgetting that. Everyone talks about patching images, patching OSs. Your firmware, if it's not up to date, you're running into issues too, because your hardware sometimes is touching that internet and you're worried about the software. But meanwhile, there's a vulnerability that's been sitting out there since like the caveman days.
Absolutely.
So something I wanted to touch on while we still have time. We talked about a lot about how, well, we just talked about how the threats have changed. People are going after the soft spots. We get good on one thing, they go after the stuff we're not so good on. How incident response has changed a lot, going from the old school on site to now doing remote things, trying to catch attacks in progress, all that kind of stuff. The other big thing that I personally have always associated with incident response, and we touched on it, is stress. Stress not only for the customers, but for the team. It's a tough job with weird hours. Used to be with a lot of travel, maybe not so much anymore. But how is and that's one of the reasons I've said before, you got to love it. You got to love doing that stuff because it's not easy. How is the stress level these days? Is it getting a little easier? Is it getting tougher? Or where do things stand?
You missed one part, Joe, before the answer.
What's that?
Sometimes the clients stress out the IR people too, like myself.
Especially you. Yes.
This is something Lisa can answer better than me.
You think? No, I think we can both speak about it. We've both worked in it. We work in it with teams. But I think, yeah, there's a dual aspect to it. And Adam, you did mention this when you were talking about that other IR company and how they said they were working 14 hours and disappear for 5-6 days. And that's when I wanted to say that, well, why? Not that it's not necessary. So the twofold answer to this is, on one hand, people who go into this profession are usually, like you said, they love it. So loving the stress of it, loving the urgency of it speaks to a certain character of people that enjoy it. They like going into that hyper focus of the investigation, and they just can't remove their hands from it until they get to a certain point, because you start having findings. You think you got it, you think you know where it came from. So it's kind of, you're investigating, you're doing your detective work, whatever it is, and it's hard to put it down. And I think, like, in our prep conversation, we told you guys that we once had to threaten, if I may use this word, an employee, that we're going to put parental controls on his computer if he's not going to go to sleep at night. Because for the guys, like, it's a sense of accomplishment, and it really is an accomplishment when they're solving the problem for the customer and solving the investigation. So that's a really, really good thing. But I think with moving to remote, when you used to send a person on site, that's all you got. That's what the customer had. That's what the organization had. And when they were eating their sandwich at lunch or taking a bathroom break or sleeping, the investigation would stop, and everybody's stressed, and it's, the old slow human ways. So people really did have to put all their efforts, everything dependent on that one person or two or however many they sent, and they really would disappear. And it was very stressful, and there were reasons for burnout and for stress. Today with remote, there is no reason for that. So I think if somebody is working 6 days straight or 8 days to 2 weeks, no breaks, 14-hour days, then we need to raise a question with their management about why. We rely on remote teams, global teams. We put them in a way that 24/7 coverage would be easier without forcing people to work at night, etc. There are ways around it. You can minimize the stress, you can minimize the burnout, and you can normalize the work as much as possible, obviously within reason, because there's certain logical threads to the investigation that is hard to interrupt in the middle and hand over to another person. I think sort of, if it's starting to kill people or to cause them real mental health issues, then I think we have some questions to ask to their management, and as management, I hold myself responsible to that, ourselves accountable. So yeah, I think outside of us who function best when we're stressed, there are organizational things that we can do in order to give our people a better work-life balance.
If I can add, so Tim, you box, right? You said you used to box, or you did box. So Lisa, like, I believe when people go into this, almost like the ring for boxing with this incident response, is a level. No one gets into the ring because they say they want to get hit. People get into well, I shouldn't say that. I like getting hit, but people get into the ring because there's a level of endorphins. There's a level of, like, it's like doing incident response is like getting in the ring. It's like being on a drug. When you're in that IR mode and you're getting to something and there's an adversary and you're defending and you're digging into it, you keep on digging. I think I've never done what you guys did, but you want to get to that problem. You want to solve that problem. It's like mano a mano. Even though you might have a team with you, you're still an individual contributor looking into that. And that's how I see the IR. You get hooked on it. You get high on it. You get this endorphins. Your heart's beating, but your blood. It's just everything about it is. I want to win the fight, and that's how I see the parallel between boxing and IR.
Yeah, it's exactly that. So I forget to eat during incident. It's very rare that I'm hands on keyboard these days. It is something, and a friend of mine once described it as, it's a cyber knife fight. That's all your mind is trained on, but you are then reliant on your managers to pull you out of that and to manage that. we have a global team for a reason. We can hand over from the US to Japan. We can hand over to to the guys in Europe. It's there's a team for a reason. There's no heroes. There doesn't need to be heroes in this. But it's also why we're insistent on maintaining bench time. There has to be a good split of when you're at the coal face and when you are doing the IR work, and then when you're rotated out for that R&R where you'll work on development time and just have some time with your thoughts and your family, and just taking some time to decompress. You can't keep going. That's how you burn out, and that's we don't operate that way.
Wow, it's great to hear that you're taking that into consideration. That's a really core thing in taking care of your people like that, especially in incident response. Because, I could tell you in my career, maybe it's because I'm a New York guy. That sentiment has not always been there. And even today, that's not there for a lot of places. And we really do, and we talked about it before, I do worry that we have a bit of a mental health crisis in general in society, but also in information security. There is still a lot of burnout and a lot of people who maybe, like you say, lean towards getting too much into it, and they need people who are not going to exploit that, but teach them how to pull back and not drive themselves nuts, and
Because
also
Joe,
actively not
yeah,
exploit it.
everything's adversarial in New York. You go to get a coffee at the coffee cart, it's adversarial. What do you want? What do you mean what I want? I want coffee. Why don't you tell me how you want the coffee? And you get into the whole thing. It takes 15 minutes to get coffee in New York. Everything's adversarial.
But you can't give 100% all of the time. There gets to a point where it's diminishing returns. If you've been at it for 10 hours, you're no use to anyone. You're sat at the keyboard. You've checked out mentally, whether you know it or not. It's better to hand over to a fresh set of eyes, get some rest, and come back tomorrow.
That's so true. Mental fatigue. People don't realize. People think you have to keep on going. Sometimes the best thing you could ever do is take that 10, 15-minute break, step back, and then you get like this light bulb over your head. Like, oh my God, if I stopped, I would have realized that's what's actually happening. And it's almost driving a car with lights and sirens on and getting those blinders on and not realizing there's a car to your left or a car to your right.
I solve more IR problems in my sleep than I do when I'm sat at the keyboard. And I'll literally wake up, bolt upright in bed, think, oh my God, and then I have to go downstairs and check it. And I've lost count of how many times that's happened now.
Well, that's a good trick.
It
Take
is,
a
yeah.
nap.
It's literally when you end up working genuinely working during your sleep, and you're like having a dream about the job.
I was in a joke. I don't want people to get the wrong thing, but Tim's like, oh my God, I just slept 4 hours. I figured out the answer. Bill client 4 hours. I'm joking. I'm joking.
That's why
It's
we
actually
don't
better.
feel like that.
I'm joking. I'm
CTO
joking.
naps.
Well, it's better you do it in your sleep, because I do it. I like to go out in the car and drive. That's how I think, which is probably not the safest thing in the world, to be honest. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We've covered a lot. It's interesting to talk about incident response. The world with it has changed quite a bit, and I guess to a certain extent, we like to talk about the doom and gloom sometimes, but it sounds like it's changed a bit for the better. That maybe we're getting a lot of things down, and it's not quite as things aren't the catastrophe that they used to be when this stuff comes up.
Having an incident is not a dirty word anymore. Companies bounce back from it. It's not something that's hidden. In a lot of countries, you have to declare that you've had an incident, and a lot of companies come out stronger for it, having had an incident and learned a lot from it, and bounce back. So it's good that it's in the spotlight now, and it's there are a lot of companies doing it, not necessarily doing it, but there are also a lot of companies doing it the old-fashioned manual way, and that's effectively what led us to found ThreatLight and build ThreatLight is to do it the more dynamic, much more quicker way of doing it, which you can rattle this off much quicker than I can, Lisa.
Yeah, I was going to say manual may mislead people to think that we're fully automated, and this is not what we believe in. Obviously, this is very deep expert work. We're just modernizing the methodology, and, we are utilizing the tools and automating whatever can be automated without removing the human expert aspect from it. Like strong believers in the hybridity and finding that optimal point where the human meets the modern tooling and the automations, and to also make it more affordable. I think, Adam, at some point you mentioned how to hire you, people need to have the budget. Like, yes, they need to pay us, obviously. This is not something that unfortunately, this is not something we can afford to do for free, but we are building it in the way that for example, the way we built the tooling, the architecture, we thought about, let's not collect all the data we're not going to need. That's kind of everything we're doing. We're trying to build it at scale, and the work is done faster, so it does become a lot more affordable, and we want to allow SMBs to be able to afford enterprise level expertise, which is also important because there's a lot of companies that won't take them on, and that is such a shame because they need the same help as everybody else.
Okay, well, I gotta say, we haven't actually worked together, but if you guys are as good at IR as you are at just seamlessly sliding the plug in, you're good. I want to work with you. Anyway, for ThreatLight, we'll have a link in the description. Everyone, please check them out. Oh, and the rubber ducky, right? That's
He's
right.
had that Doug sat there the whole time, and I was like, well, I don't have a place to put mine. So that's my fidget toy that was in my hand the whole time.
I was deeply moved when the ducks, like the 10 ducks, were looking into the sunset, and it said ThreatLight. I'm not gonna. I don't want to say this, but I'm gonna say this, and I shouldn't be saying this. When I saw your ducks, I had duck envy, and I wanted to look at marketing and make ducks that said in the name of our podcast. But Joe stopped me, and he
Only
talked me out
one
of it.
duck died in the making of that
Yes, it
photo
would
as
have
well.
been 11 if it would have been 11 if one of them didn't fly off the roof.
Yeah.
Got carried away by a seagull.
Wait. Did it jump off, or did you throw it off because it wasn't compliant?
It
It got knocked off. It lost its
flight.
footing.
It took flight.
It took
It
forever to hit
decided
the
to
ground.
explore freedom.
Okay, you have a picture of that, right?
Mental image of that.
No, I was gonna say we could put a link down if you have a picture, but okay.
Not the duck falling
We'll
off.
have AI generate it.
No, they had the picture of the ducks, not the one falling
Yeah,
off.
it's on
Send
our
that to her, I'll
LinkedIn.
Oh,
send
not the
it.
one falling off. Oh, okay.
No, not
Well,
the
that
one
would be
falling off.
It's on Mitch.
all right.
Not the
Okay,
kamikaze
well,
duck, just the compliant ones.
okay, we'll post the non-injured duck picture then. That's cool. We can do that. All right.
Yeah.
Well, Lisa, Tim, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a
Thank you,
lot of
guys.
fun. Really important
Thank
topic. We love talking about it.
Thank you so much for having
Well,
Thank you,
us.
guys.
see
It
you
was
soon.
fun.
Adam,
Thank
always
you.
fun.
Always fun.
Always
All right.
fun.
Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.